and welcome to GameSet. Today I'm talking about Super Mario Bros. 3D All-Stars for the Nintendo Switch. Now, this release celebrates Mario's 35th anniversary, and it has games like Super Mario 64 from the Nintendo 64, Super Mario Bros. Sunshine from the GameCube, and of course Super Mario Galaxy from the Wii. Now, I've seen a lot of people complain online that, hey, these games already exist. Why would I want this? Why is everyone getting excited? This is dumb. Well, to that I say that this isn't like the old Virtual Console days. They didn't just slap this on here and call it done. Or did they? I'm going to be taking a look at each and every one of these games and comparing them to the original releases and playing them on their native hardware. And I'm going to get off the screen now so we can begin talking about those games. And we're going to start out with Super Mario 64.
Hello!
Super Mario 64 was part of the launch lineup for the Nintendo 64 that included a whopping 2 games. This wasn't the first full 3D platformer ever made, but I think it was the first great one, by far. Sorry, Croc, but it ain't you. It let us do some exploring in a way that we really hadn't seen in video games before, at least not on this level. Most courses have 6 stars to grab, and there are a bunch more hidden around as well. I've always loved this game, and it's still super fun today once you get the hang of the controls and the camera. Speaking of the camera, it hasn't aged very well and it can be a bit annoying at times, but it's worth dealing with to play this game. This is an absolute masterpiece of a game and it will always have a huge soft spot in my heart. The version of the game on Super Mario 3D All-Stars attempts some minor improvements. First and foremost, you'll notice that the graphics are a lot sharper now. The polygon edges are now 720p smooth instead of the original jaggy 240p. Yeah, that's right, for some reason this game is only rendered in 720p instead of 1080. Of course, if you connect it to your dock and play it on your TV, it displays in 1080p, but it's still only being rendered at 720p. Let's keep in mind that these games are emulated and not ported because, as you know, Nintendo just can't be bothered. But at least they decided to improve some things. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have redone many of the textures, so most things still look rough and blurry. As a result, this diminishes the game's HD appeal, even though it does appear much sharper now. But it still doesn't hold a candle to what some people were able to do with this game on the PC. They did redo a few textures though, like the ones on Mario. Look at the M on his hat as well as his mustache and eyes. Some sprite-like objects look a little bit better, like the coins, steel balls, and the trees. They also made the font look sharper and slightly more readable. I just wish they hadn't stopped there. The frame rate unfortunately remains at 30 frames per second, but I haven't experienced any slowdown that I was able to detect. The game is also still presented in 4:3 sadly, and they made no effort to present it in widescreen. I really wish they would have taken the time to do that. Sometimes I wonder about the ability of Nintendo's programmers, but I think in this case, they just didn't care as much as they should have. As far as the sound goes, well, it sounds like a Nintendo 64. The only thing that was slightly peculiar to me is when you choose your level. Mario's "Let's go" is slightly cut off.
Let's go! Let's go!
I guess playing the entire sound file is perhaps asking too much of the Nintendo Switch. I bet the PS4 Pro could probably do it though. Maybe. So, how's the control? Well, it's mostly the same on the Switch. The right analog stick now controls your camera instead of the clumsy yellow C buttons. The camera itself is still very clumsy though. You crouch with ZL or ZR. You can play this with the Pro controller, which is really nice, at least I like using it anyway, despite some people saying they hate it. Overall, the control is great, it feels natural except for the camera, and it's leagues better than using the Nintendo 64 controller. This is an outstanding game, but let's face it, it deserves better than this. So, Super Mario Bros. Sunshine is often considered the black sheep of the series, but lately people have been telling me that it's actually underrated and that I should give it another try. Let's see if Nintendo agrees with that sentiment by giving it a decent enough overhaul.
Super Mario Sunshine! Woohoo!
Super Mario Sunshine came out for the GameCube about 8 months after the console was launched. I tell you, I bought it right away because I wanted more Super Mario 64 goodness, only powered up for the future on the GameCube. What I got was not that. Instead, you're using a water pack called Flood to spray down some nasty goo that's all over the place. Is that actually goo? It looks more like, yeah, let's just move on. You can also use Flood to hover around a bit. As you can imagine, pretty much everything you do in this game revolves spraying water in some way. You spray water by pressing down on the R trigger a little bit, or you can stop and spray by pressing it all the way down. You'll get used to it quickly since you're spraying 90% of the time you're playing. This certainly isn't a bad game, but at the time, it wasn't what I wanted, as it only kind of resembled the previous 3D Mario game. I just didn't like spraying water around almost the entire time. Some things are similar though, like getting stars, which are now called shines, as well as multiple goals to complete in each stage. It looked really good too, with great art and vibrant colors. It ran at progressive scan, also known as 480p. Unfortunately, like every single game that Nintendo developed themselves for the GameCube, it didn't have any widescreen option at all. Super Mario Sunshine here on the Switch has a huge facelift and it's pretty much amazing. I mean, look at these visuals. Isle Delfino never looked so good. You get widescreen now running at full 1080p in docked mode and 720p in handheld mode. It looks so much better either way. And yeah, that's right, it's in widescreen when the GameCube version wasn't. It's truly wider too, not just cropped. So Nintendo actually did put some effort into this one. Why they couldn't do this in Mario 64 is beyond me. Unfortunately, this one still runs at 30 frames per second, just like the GameCube version. Sometimes it'll even drop a frame or two. Oh well, I'm just glad they didn't leave it in 4:3 like they did with Mario 64. The FMV scenes have been upscaled with some kind of smoothing filter slapped on top. What's funny is that when Flood is explaining the controls, they cut out some of the button names from the audio since the buttons are different on the Switch.
Enter a body of water and press the button.
Yeah, they cut that out, but in the actual gameplay, the X button is still shaped like the GameCube's X button. Go figure. The controls on the Switch here are more or less the same with one key difference. The Switch doesn't have analog shoulder buttons, so they had to change how the Flood shoots water. If you want to run and squirt, you hold the ZR button. If you want to stop and squirt, you just press R. This was surprisingly difficult to get used to. It's probably easier if you're not used to the GameCube's version's controls though. As for the game, yeah, I'm still not a fan at all. In fact, playing this has kind of rekindled my hatred for it. The camera is still atrocious and extremely unforgiving. The controls still don't feel quite right, and sometimes they can be infuriating. I almost always aim the wrong way vertically when it comes to spraying my water, and of course there's no option to invert that axis. Nintendo just doesn't believe in that. All in all, I just get tired of playing this one. I can only take so much of Bianco Hills. Oh yeah, and I don't think that's goo. Look at that. That's gross. If you do like this game, then you'll definitely like what Nintendo did here. It's definitely better than the GameCube version. As for me, I just can't. It's boring. The final game is Super Mario Galaxy. The first one. And only the first one. I guess it's a good thing that I prefer the first one, and I'm honestly really curious to see how they handled it here. Super Mario Galaxy for the Wii is another one that was really nothing like Super Mario 64. And I'm A-okay with that when a game is this good. That's right, it may surprise some of you, or even a lot of you, that I am a huge fan of this game. I fell in love with it right away when I first played it. It was very fresh, and I love the take on things that this game offered. You are now exploring entire galaxies and running around on every single planet in each galaxy. Sure, the galaxies here are smaller than most neighborhoods, but I'll let Nintendo's poor understanding of astronomy terminology slide because this game is excellent. Gravity still exists in this game, but it basically just sucks you towards the nearest surface. Sounds kind of weird, but it's remarkably easy to get used to. Unfortunately, the game relies a lot on waggle controls. You need to point the Wiimote at the screen to collect star bits and also to shoot them at enemies or whatnot. Get 50 of them and you get a 1-up, and there are other uses for them as well. You also need to quickly shake the Wiimote in order to spin. This is your basic form of attack, so you have to do it a lot. These waggle controls suck, but again, I forgave them because everything else about this game is outstanding. Like the graphics, they're amazing for the Wii. This was also the first proper Mario game in widescreen, ever. The music might even be my favorite in the series. It's absolutely perfect. I was stuck to this game until I completed everything there was to do. The version here in the 3D All-Stars collection is pretty good. As you can see, it looks much sharper than the Wii's maximum resolution of 480p. The game is now rendered in 1080p, well, at least sometimes. That's right, I guess the Switch is too weak to run this game at full 1080p the entire time, so it dials down the resolution when things get complex. In handheld mode, it tops out at 720p, but it can go even lower than that when the screen gets too busy. Still, everything looks really nice, even though it's not quite as good as I feel it should be by this point. The refresh rate remains intact and runs at 60 frames per second pretty much all the time. Once again, the font has been improved and I like it. The controls are changed around quite a bit for the Switch release here since it doesn't have a Wiimote. First and foremost, you no longer need to waggle anything to do your spin attack. Now you can just press X or Y. This already makes the game so much more enjoyable and it works really well. But if you must, you can still shake either Joy-Con if you want. At first, I was having a hard time pressing the button to shoot through the star ring thingies and I was forced to waggle, but I think I may have been trying to do it with the jump button instead since I'm an idiot. Let's just keep that between us. Unfortunately, if you want to collect star bits, and well, you really kind of have to, you need to point the Joy-Con around. Since the Joy-Con isn't a Wiimote, it can't see the lights by your screen, so you press the R button to reset the pointer to the middle of the screen. You don't actually need to point it at the screen, and honestly, just relaxing your arm and moving it around is much more comfortable than using the Wii remote. There you go, that one was for anyone who was sick of me calling it a Wiimote. This works surprisingly well a great majority of the time. I thought this would be so much worse, but it's actually okay. You can press ZR to shoot a star bit when you need to shoot a star bit. But what about in portable mode with the Joy-Cons attached to the screen? Now you have to use the touchscreen, but that also means letting go of your jump and attack controls while you do it, or your running controls if you're left-handed. Have fun with that. There's also a 2-player mode with each player using a single Joy-Con. Player 2 controls all of the star bit madness. The other segments that use motion controls are still in here, and they basically control the same way as they did on the Wii, but now you're tilting a Joy-Con or the entire Switch in handheld mode. I find it interesting that they updated the user interface to reflect the Switch controls here, unlike in Super Mario Sunshine. Believe it or not, you can actually play with a Pro controller, but it's slightly weird. You have to tilt the entire controller to move the cursor around on screen. It's very comfortable, but it definitely takes a few minutes to get used to. This game is immensely fun, and I have a very hard time putting it down because something new and cool is always opening up. And of course, you just gotta go try that new Galaxy. It has been far too long since I played all the way through this one. It's a shame that Super Mario Galaxy 2 isn't on here. While it never resonated with me anywhere near as well as the first game did, it's still an outstanding game and it really needs to be in this collection. Why isn't it? This entire collection only takes up about 4.5 gigabytes, which isn't much more than a single layer DVD, so space definitely wasn't the issue. As a result of Galaxy 2's absence, the entire collection feels kind of incomplete. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of other things that make it feel incomplete. Mario 64's graphics. Sorry, I gotta get that checked out. But the first Mario Galaxy here will keep you busy for quite some time, make no mistake about that. The final thing we need to look at are any of the special features that they may have included in this release. Is there a gallery of some kind? Perhaps a sound mode? Maybe they included the original commercials for each game. Or maybe they included nothing at all. Let's take a look. As far as the extras go, there's a small blurb about each game in the game selection menu. Nothing very fancy here. Also, if you press the minus button at any time during any of the games, you'll call up a screen that lets you look at the control layout for that game and also gives you a list of moves that you can do. You can also retreat back into the main selection menu from here. Also, from the selection menu, you can choose to listen to the soundtrack from each game. These were official CD releases in Japan. I don't think they were released elsewhere. This is a fairly nice feature, especially with Galaxy since it has so many tracks. They all sound decent if slightly compressed, but really nothing to complain about. As far as extras, that's all this release has. Oh wait, one more thing. I've been hearing that this is a very, very limited release. Not only physically, but even digitally as well. I've been hearing that this will only be on Nintendo's eShop for a number of months. I can't imagine that this is true, but if it is, I just can't understand Nintendo's reasoning. If Nintendo is saying things like this, it's actually to drum up sales now. I have a feeling that you'll be able to get this at least digitally for the foreseeable future. But still, I had to mention this nonsense. There you go, that's Super Mario Bros. 3D All-Stars for you. Overall, I feel that Nintendo could have put in a lot more effort on this. That being said, it's definitely not a complete waste. In fact, I feel that this is now probably the best way to play these three games. If it had Galaxy 2, it'd even be that much better, but maybe they're saving that for another 3D collection on a future console. Who knows? Anyway, what do you guys think of Super Mario Bros. 3D All-Stars? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. I'll be in this other room. Hey, how's it going? Good, good. You're probably wondering how I got this little shiner up here. It's completely real, it's not fake at all. And in order to explain that, we're probably gonna have to go back to maybe 5 minutes ago when I was shooting the ending skit for this episode, where I decided to play a little bit of Nintendo Wii. Ow! You're just jealous that you're not a Sega console. Ugh. Sega has Green Dog.